I have a hard time believing that any general manager or any team in the NFL has had a more successful draft thus far than the Cleveland Browns. Andrew Berry somehow figured out a way to get 4 players that the team was considered drafting in the first 24 picks.
Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns absolutely crushed the 2026 NFL Draft. And I know Browns fans have heard that kind of sentence before, but this one actually feels different. Because this was not just a random collection of picks that looks cute on a graphic. This was a draft where Cleveland attacked premium needs, added real competition, got value, traded smartly, and somehow walked away with multiple players they were already considering much earlier. And here's the part nobody is talking about. Even people who are not usually Andrew Berry fans are having to put their hands up and say, okay, he cooked.
And on paper, this 2026 draft class looks just as good, if not better, considering the positions that the Browns took swings on in premium needs for this team.
Now, before we go too crazy, let's be honest. Nobody truly wins the draft in April. We have seen draft classes get praised on paper and fall apart once the pads come on. We have seen classes get laughed at and then turn into legendary groups. The Seahawks once got crushed for a class that gave them Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. So, yeah, nobody knows for sure. But if we are grading the process, the talent, the value, and how the picks match the Browns' biggest needs, it is hard to argue Cleveland did not have one of the best draft weekends in the entire NFL. This is where it gets dangerous, because the Browns did not just hit one need and call it a day. They came into this draft needing offensive line help, receiver help, more depth, more speed, more competition, and more future flexibility. And Andrew Berry checked almost every box. Spencer Fano gives them a potential franchise offensive tackle. Concepcion gives them explosiveness and route running. Denzel Boston gives them size and ball skills. Emanuel McNeil-Warren gives them a versatile defensive playmaker. Then they kept adding offensive line depth, tight end help, linebacker depth, and even a developmental quarterback swing in Taylan Green.
None of these picks, none of these projections matter until the players take the field. You could have a draft that looks great on paper that does not pan out. You could have a draft that you hate on paper that turns out to be an all-time class.
The whole thing started with Spencer Fano, and that move set the tone. The Browns were sitting at 6, traded down to 9, picked up extra value, and still got the offensive lineman they wanted. That is the kind of move smart front offices make. If they believed Fano was the best offensive lineman in the draft, and they still managed to get him after moving back, that is a win. You don't just draft the player, you maximize the board while doing it. Here's the part nobody's talking about. Fano might be the most important pick of the entire class, because everything the Browns want to do offensively starts up front. It doesn't matter who wins the quarterback job if the protection is bad. It doesn't matter how good the receivers are if the pocket collapses. Cleveland needed a real answer on the offensive line, and Fano gives them someone they can plug in, develop, and potentially build around for years.
And then in round 3, they pick up Austin Barber, the left tackle from Florida, a 3-year SEC starter, a guy who's considered one of the best run-blocking offensive linemen in the entire NFL draft. His pass pro leaves a little bit to be desired, according to all the scouting reports, but in terms of a run-blocking mauler.
Then at receiver, the Browns made the draft even more interesting. They took Concepcion, and then Denzel Boston fell to them at 39. That is where you start looking at the board like, wait, how did Cleveland pull this off? These were not random day 3 flyers. These were players the team reportedly had in the conversation much earlier. KC brings quickness, separation, route running, and return ability. Boston brings size, strong hands, and catch point ability. They're different types of receivers, which is exactly why the pairing makes sense. This is where young players usually make a mistake. They think being drafted high means the role is already theirs, but this Browns receiver room is about to be a fight. Jerry Jeudy is there, KC is there, Boston is there, Isaiah Bond is there. Then you have guys like Tillman, Thrash, Corley, and anyone else battling for a spot. Nothing is guaranteed. That's good. That's how you raise the floor of a position group that needed more juice. Concepcion is going to be one of the most talked about rookies because his talent pops. He can separate, he can make people miss, he can create after the catch, he can return kicks, but he also has to clean up the drops. Everybody knows it. That's the risk. But when you draft a player like that, you're betting that the things he does well are hard to find and the things he struggles with can be improved. If the hands become reliable, he can become a serious weapon.
They traded up to get Austin Barber, a guy they clearly valued, in the 5th round. Parker Brailsford, the versatile offensive lineman from Alabama, was the selection. He was a guy that was actually tied to Cleveland throughout the mock draft.
Denzel Boston is the opposite kind of bet. He's bigger, more physical, and better when the ball is in the air. He tracks it well, he has strong hands, and he gives the quarterback a bigger target. The question is whether he can separate consistently. But even there, some people think he's better vertically than he gets credit for. If he learns how to avoid contact instead of always trying to run through it, he can become much more than just a contested catch receiver. Here's the part nobody's talking about. Fano and Boston together make more sense than either one alone. One gives you suddenness, the other gives you size. One wins with separation, separation, the other wins with ball skills. One can be used in space, the other can stretch the field and attack the catch point. That's how you build a complete receiver room. You don't just draft the same player twice, you draft different answers for different problems.
Fano, Concepcion, Boston, Emanuel McNeil-Warren were ranked 11, 24, 25, and 31 in the final Grinding the Mocks consensus ranks. The data only goes back to 2018, but the Browns are the first team to draft 4 of the top 32 in a single draft.
Then Cleveland somehow added Emanuel McNeil-Warren in the second round, and that might be one of the steals of the draft. A lot of evaluators had him much higher. He has size, toughness, range, and the ability to operate around the line of scrimmage. That's important because the Browns can use him in different looks. Maybe they play more 3 safety packages. Maybe he becomes a nickel-type defender in certain situations. Maybe they help them get more flexible on defense. This is where it gets dangerous, because if McNeil-Warren hits, this defense gets another chess piece. The Browns already had defensive talent, but modern defenses need versatility. You need defensive backs who can tackle, cover, rotate, blitz, and survive in space. McNeil-Warren gives them a player who can do a little bit of everything, and that matters in the AFC North, where every game turns physical fast.
Me, Mikey McNuggets, Mike Lucas, am a notorious non-AB guy. I thought AB was just as culprit and just as part of the issue as Kevin Stefanski was. I wanted them both gone, but I got to put my hand up and say, hey, that 2025 draft class was incredible.
The middle rounds were not boring either. Austin Barber from Florida gives them a massive offensive tackle with SEC experience and real run blocking power. He is not perfect in pass protection, but at that point in the draft, you were looking for traits and role potential. A 6'7", 325-pound lineman who can move people in the run game is worth betting on, and the Browns traded up because they clearly valued him. Then Parker Braceford gives them a different type of offensive line prospect. He is undersized, but athletic and versatile. He played multiple spots, moved from Washington to Alabama, and brings the kind of movement skills that can be useful in a creative offense. When you think about what Todd Monken has done with athletic centers and interior linemen, you can see why Cleveland would be intrigued. Maybe he needs more size, but the movement ability is real. Here's the part nobody is talking about. The Browns did not just draft offensive linemen for the starting 5. They drafted competition for the entire room. Luke Weipler, Zach Zinter, backups, swing linemen, all of them are going to feel this. The roster spots are not safe. That is exactly what Cleveland needed. Too many times this team has been one injury away from disaster up front. Now they have bodies, competition, and options. They also added Justin Jefferson, the Alabama linebacker, who brings depth and a special teams profile. Not every pick needs to be a future Pro Bowler. Some picks are about making the back end of your roster stronger. If Jefferson can tackle, run, and contribute on special teams, that is real value. Winning teams hit on those types too. Then, Joe Royer at tight end gives them another useful piece, a blocking tight end from Cincinnati, someone who can help in heavy sets, support the run game, and fight for a depth role. And later, Taylan Green becomes the wild card pick that everybody is going to talk about because the athletic traits are insane. He is big, fast, explosive, has a huge arm, and set combine records for quarterbacks. Is he ready to start? No. Is he even guaranteed to develop as a passer? No. But in the 6th round, that is the type of upside swing you take. This is where young players usually make a mistake. They think athleticism alone makes them a quarterback. Taylan Green has to become more consistent as a passer. He has to protect the ball, he has to read defenses, he has to prove he can run an offense, not just win a workout. But as a developmental bet, it makes sense. You are not drafting him to save the franchise today. You are drafting him because the tools are rare, and if something clicks, the payoff could be big. And now the Browns' quarterback room is weird but interesting. Deshaun Watson is still part of the conversation. Shedeur Sanders has the fan base energy and the distributor profile. Dylan Gabriel brings production and experience. Taylan Green brings the freak athletic upside. That is a lot of different quarterback styles in one room. It could get messy, but it also creates competition. And after what Cleveland has been through at quarterback, maybe taking multiple swings is not a bad idea. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Andrew Berry also added future draft capital while doing all this. He moved around the board, picked up extra picks, and reportedly added future 4th rounders. That matters because good teams stay flexible. If you need to move up next year, you have ammo. If you need to trade for a veteran, you have resources. If you need to keep rebuilding depth, you have more chances. That is how you keep a roster alive beyond one draft weekend. Now the biggest stat floating around is that Cleveland landed 4 players who were ranked inside the consensus top 32 by some draft boards: Fano, Concepcion, Boston, and McNeil-Warren. That doesn't guarantee anything, but it's still impressive. It means the Browns got players that the broader draft community viewed as high-level talents. 4 of them in the first 2 rounds is wild. You cannot ask for much more on paper. This is where it gets dangerous, because now the pressure shifts from the front office to development. Barry got the players. Now the coaches have to turn them into production. Fano has to be coached into a reliable left tackle. KC has to clean up the hands. Boston has to sharpen the separation. McNeil-Warren has to find his role. Barber and Braceford have to push the offensive line room. Taylan Green has to be developed patiently. Drafting talent is step 1. Turning it into wins is the real job. And that is is why this draft class feels so important for Barry's legacy. He has had misses. Browns fans know that. Receivers and offensive linemen have not always been his strongest areas, so for him to come into this draft and attack those exact positions aggressively is a big statement. If this class works, it changes how people talk about it. If it fails, it becomes another example critics will use against it. But right now, he deserves credit. Even if you are not an Andrew Barry guy, you have to be honest. This draft made sense. The value was there, the needs were there, the trade strategy was there, the upside was there, the roster construction was there. It's okay to say he crushed it without pretending every player is already a star. Those are two different things. Here's the part nobody is talking about. This draft also makes the summer more exciting. Rookie camp, OTAs, training camp, preseason, all of it has real storylines now. How does Fano look at tackle? Can KC separate right away? Does Boston flash as a red zone weapon? Does McNeil-Warren move around the defense? Does Taylan Green look like a quarterback or just an athlete? Browns fans finally have young players at fun positions to track. The bigger legacy angle is simple. This could be the class that helps Cleveland stop living in off-season excuses. They attacked the offensive line, they added receivers, they added defensive versatility, they added depth, they added quarterback upside. If this works, the Browns won't just be better on paper. They'll be more balanced, more competitive, and more prepared to survive a long season. So now, the debate starts. Did Andrew Barry just deliver the draft class that changes the direction of the Cleveland Browns, or are we falling into the same trap of crowning paper champions before anyone plays a snap? Because if Spencer Fano becomes the anchor, KC Concepcion and Denzel Boston become real weapons, Emanuel McNeil-Warren becomes a defensive playmaker, and the offensive line finally stabilizes, then this draft could be remembered as the moment Barry proved everybody wrong. But if these picks don't translate, then all this excitement becomes another Browns offseason that looked better in April than it did in December.